and welcome to the Slay to Success Talk Show. You know who it is tonight. It is your girl, your Slay Queen, Rochelle Hemingway, and I am the CEO and founder of Slay to Success. So, you all have been here that have been here with us. Know that I have amazing speakers that come here to share exactly what I share with a lot of people that I meet. And so, as a speaker, author, a mentor, and a United States Air Force veteran of 30 years, I'm here to share with you all about leadership, wellness, and mindset. Slate Success is a leadership and transformational consultant service, and it is designed to help the mid to senior level professional women who have recently arrived in a position of leadership, who are on the precipice of a leadership, or who are transitioning from a long career to step up and step into their personal brand with 10x authentic confidence. And we create a personal transformational plan that you can use, you design for yourself, and then you get after whatever it is that you're doing. And we know that this purpose of this talk show is to highlight men and women who are living a life of service on their own terms and using the slave philosophies to positively impact the world. Now, the word slay, all right, let's cover ground just one more time, means to kill it, to dominate it, and to nail it, to be on point, to impress greatly, to dream and work hard until you own it. And not only is it a word, a more powerful word, but it's also an acronym. S, stay ready to be ready. L, lead out loud. A sense of community, a sense of family. And Y, you are built to last. And so, as we all know, we come here on the show and I show you all the things that Slate to Success is doing. Just go ahead and use your QR scan code. Go and use your phone, take a picture, take a look at what we're doing so that way you can be a part of what we're doing so that way you don't miss out on anything. We are having so much fun, y'all. I have a transition to transformation program, a leadership development training. We have personal branding consultations, Facebook posts, and membership groups, talk show, of course, that you're on, women empowerment events, and a monthly mastermind group. All right. So thank you so much, Melanie, for being here tonight. You're here from LinkedIn. So all my LinkedIn professionals, how you doing tonight? For all those that are on Facebook, hello. And for you all that are on YouTube, please make sure that you use the comments and let us know that you are here. So tonight, y'all, I have an amazing friend. Okay. She is really on fire. Okay. She's lighting it up. And I just want to share with you all just a little bit about who she is. So, Misty Cook is our featured guest for tonight, and she is the Chief Executive Officer of Concierge On Call, and it's affectionately known as the COC. And in her leadership role at this consulting firm, Misty specializes in guiding retired general flag officers and senior leaders through the intricate steps of transitioning from military service to establishing their own thriving consulting enterprises. She plays a crucial role in preparing these individuals to leave a lasting and distinguished impression, facilitating a seamless transition and providing the tools and strategies to create opportunities for post-retirement income that align with their lifestyle goals. Now, leveraging her extensive background in administrative support, adept meeting planning, and a robust network of business connections, Misty assists leaders in securing speaking engagements and opportunities for board memberships. Her team collaborates with senior leadership, presidents, and chief executive officers, delivering executive assistant services that support business growth and maintain their professional reputation with numerous prestigious corporations globally. As a former Marine officer, Misty's portfolio spans diverse projects ranging from developing innovative processes for startups to meticulously planning and executing events for foreign dignitaries, state and federal representatives, and industry leaders across the United States and abroad. Beyond her corporate responsibilities, Misty shares her insights as a speaker at consulting firms and armed forces events, earning recognition as an expert in military protocol, event planning, and dining etiquette. Currently residing in Washington, D.C. All right, you know, anyone in the DMV, we know this very well, what's going on down there. She brings a wealth of expertise and leadership to the heart of the nation's capital. So please, everyone, a round of applause for my friend, my Marine officer in this whole transition, but we're doing it together, my sister in arms. So welcome, Misty, to the stage.
Thank you so much, Rochelle. That was a
Hello.
lot. That was a lot that you've had to do to get through that. So I appreciate the amazing intro.
Well, it is your flowers, my queen. All right. And I believe that everyone who's here, sometimes you don't get the flowers that they deserve. And so it's an honor for me to have you here and to actually let the audience know exactly what you're doing so that they are inspired even more just by saying the things that you've already earned and accomplished. So thank you so much for being here as a guest. And so we'll just go ahead and get started in our conversation tonight. So Misty, you were in the Marines.
Mm-hmm.
And so tell the audience a little bit about your journey of being in the military
Mm-hmm.
and kind of like what made you decide or guess enlist or become an officer in the Marines.
So it's really funny. I have always kind of edited this version until a couple of weeks ago. I was doing where I'm going to be part of a book. And so they were telling, I was like, you know what? I actually need to tell this story right.
Mm-hmm.
I usually just kind of buzz past it, but because it just seems like too much like personal information. But then I thought, you know what? There's a lot of people going through the same thing. And so instead of just saying like, I wiggled my nose and then I showed up in the Marine Corps. So I actually was a spouse of a active duty sergeant, and we were like high school sweethearts, and then he went off into the Marine Corps, and so I joined him after high school, and I was 18, got married, and was a wife, and he was active duty. And so I was at home, like spit shining his boots and pressing his camis and doing all the things. And I was like, I want my own set of camis. And as anybody knows, like if you live overseas or in Hawaii, Japan, there is a difference in the camaraderie that comes from those organizations, because you can't afford to go back and forth with holidays. So those men and women become your family. And so I'm not sure, how the cards would have fell if I didn't live there first. But we had such a tight group. I had spent the entire, a year and a half on that island without going home and being that young, and so I just saw an incredible camaraderie in the Marine Corps. And so all I would talk about was, I want to be a Marine. I want to be a Marine. And he was like, that's crazy. And not exactly, the thing that he thought was going to happen. And so about 6 months, maybe 6 months, 9 months into it, he was finally like, okay, fine. If you want to do it, do it. And I was going and like applying for jobs. I was going to college at night and I was doing all the things, but everybody kept saying like, you need experience. And I'm like, well, how do I get experience if I don't get experience,
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a very frustrating process. And so I joined the Marine Corps. Fast forward, he PCSs from Hawaii and I go to boot camp. And so they kind of timed it where we were leaving the island around the same time. And so that's how I enlisted in the Marine Corps. And then through that, over the next 4 years, I put in for, actually my ex-husband had put in for the MESEP program, and he got it the year before. And then I put in for it, and then I got it. And so that's when I did the Marine Enlisted Education program. And I went to the Citadel for my bachelor's degree in South Carolina. And so I always kind of bypass and just say, okay, so I enlisted, and then because it just is a little bit more complicated to be like, you got married and you got divorced. But I'm like, you know what, that's life. So
yeah,
that's the story. And so then I commissioned, and I wanted to be an adjutant. And I knew that because I had help from my adjutant when I put in for my MESEP package. And I thought, man, this was a life-changing that one package put me on a different trajectory. And I realized just how impactful one person in a unit can be. And I do like to know what's going on. And so fast forward, whenever I was able to put in for what I wanted when I was at TBS, that's what I wanted. And so that was my first choice in my jobs, because I knew at the heart of it, it doesn't matter. And I say, like, as an adjutant in combat and in garrison, but truly in combat, like, all the things that are going on, who's getting married, who's getting divorced, who needs who has a Red Cross message, who's going to the hospital. And I just felt like really early on in my career as an officer, how vital I felt. I felt valued, and that the calling part was there because I knew I was important to the whole team.
Right.
And so I think that's just a really important place to feel, when you find this job and you feel important. And so that was really important to me. I know some people, it's not as sexy when you're in, but I appreciate all that it taught me for now where I sit today, administration and all the things that it, opened doors for me in protocol and things like that. So, I commissioned, and then I went to, first I went to, gosh, where did I go first? I went down to North Carolina, and then I went to Iraq. And then after I came back home, I went to the drill field and became a series commander down in Parris Island, which I always wanted to go back. It was a goal of mine since I was a recruit. I wanted to be on the other side and see, being in a room full of 120 women that could be doing anything else with their lives, that have decided that they want to be a Marine. Like, it was a really powerful place for me. And you can't really find that. I mean, you go find 120 18-year-old girls that just say, like, pick me,
Right.
So that was a really important stop in my career. And then I left there, I went to school a couple of different times in the command and staff and EWS and our schools along the way. And then I think a really pivotal part of my career was going up to the Pentagon. And as a captain, I was able to serve as the commandant's protocol officer. And that was, that opened up so many doors and introductions to people that I would have never had the opportunity to meet.
Mm-hmm.
And then also opened me up to opportunities and experiences that, I lean on today.
Right.
Just the level of no kind of, there's like a zero mentality defect, like you just can't get it wrong at that level, and you can't screw up, and you're representing not just the service, but the country at times.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really an important professionally learning place for me to be sitting in the E-ring for so long. So yeah, so I that's kind of my journey. I ended up serving almost 3 different tours in the E-ring. I think once you do protocol and administration and those things at that level, you kind of keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was able to retire out of the Pentagon in 2021.
Yeah. And, I think it was about the same time where we found each other on LinkedIn, maybe a year later or so. And for our audience, we did meet on LinkedIn. So, for many of us who have transitioned, LinkedIn is just not for people who are in business or entrepreneurship. It is about truly making connections. And so you had an event, and it was talking about transitioning, and all the things that you were speaking to were some things that I had already done. And it was almost as if we were talking to one another, like in tandem, and like on this exchange in the LinkedIn. And I was adding comments and so forth, and we were going back and forth. And over time, we've met in person, and we've, gotten to know each other a lot more better. But, I do want us to talk a little bit about the transition, because I think it's important, when we have 20 to 30 years of service in a highly conforming environment, and then you're retired and you're trying to figure out what to do and how to do it. What are some pieces of advice advice that you would give for anyone who's truly navigating their journey or just starting out?
Yeah. I think the very, very broad 30,000 feet level
Yeah.
is, I think my three things would be, do you want to get a job? Do you want to work for yourself? Um, can you, what's the most important is priority order. Location, is that important to you? Is salary important to you? And then where you want to get your value or your worth. And it doesn't have to be a job. It could be in volunteering or being part of an organization. So that's where you get your cup filled, but the job meets the criteria for your salary requirements. Or, so I don't like it when people are like, well, I just want to, I've done this for 20 years and I'm going to go get that job and I'm going to stay there for 20 more and be done. And I'm like, I don't really think that's actually going to, statistically, that's not going to happen. So I think the two priorities are you going to work for yourself or are you going to go get a job? And then, thinking about where are you going to live and is money important? So location and like, is it moving back to family and things like that? And so I think I usually start there, especially if I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking to, it's sergeant or a lieutenant colonel or a general, it doesn't matter. Like what's important to you in those two aspects. Because if they say, well, I don't have the ability to just take a leap and be an entrepreneur, I need to get a job. And it's like,
Right.
okay, well, that's crystal clear. And so when you're kind of filling in your paint by numbers, now you can fill all that in and say, it's definitely a job. And is it a job just to get by? Like you're going to live off your retirement and you just need a little bit, but you want to have something you just absolutely love. And,
Mm-hmm.
you're going back to passion. Or is it, I need to make 200K, do not pass go, don't care what I'm doing, and I will do a passion project on the side. So that's kind of where I would start.
Yeah, I love that because I know that there are a lot of um, things that are happening in our minds, and we sometimes don't have that plan, if you will, to write these things out and to really move forward in the plan. I've seen many who just jump into things and then it's like, I don't want to be here. I just don't like it. And then you'll see them jumping from one job to the next job only to come back to say, I do really want to work for myself. I really want to do something that I really enjoy doing for, the rest of my life or for a short period of stint to get to your next chapter. Because I always believe there's chapters and chapters and chapters, right? And we're constantly evolving. And in this transition, I don't know if you experience any of the emotional journey of retirement, of, for me, and I'll just speak to me, I was like, oh, I'm so happy that I am out of there. 30 years, I'm good, right? And then you get into the honeymoon phase where it's just like this feeling of just being very happy and very joyous. And then you get to a certain stage, which is called the disenchantment phase, where you're trying to fill the void. You're trying to fill it with something that you're going to be fulfilled and satisfied with. And that's when we're seeking that purpose and our calling in that. And that's when some of us get depressed and a little bit anxious and worried and stressed out,
Yeah,
and really have a hard time getting back on track and finding out really what do I want to be doing, you
yeah,
know? So it's good to like put some questions on a piece of paper, ask yourself, and then put the answers down and then start taking the steps to move in that direction.
for sure. And
Yeah.
if I have to recommend one thing, it's usually like asking them, location drives everything.
Mhm.
And so whenever they're like, well, it absolutely is, back home in Texas, or it's absolutely going to be out in Warrenton. So it's close enough to the city, but far enough that I don't come every day. Like they have location. And then you get to determine, the other pieces. Uh,
Yeah.
so I think that when it comes down to it, the other thing you said about feeling like emotionally disconnected, and I think that I did a post once and I'll have to re-up it, but it talks about how we really make our service members feel like wrong for wanting to get out or
Mhm.
guilty for
Oh,
bringing it
yeah.
up. And so I think the catch for me is I was about, so I didn't have that feeling of, because I knew 5 years before I retired, I mean at 2015, 2015, 2016, I wanted to do early retirement because I was
Mm.
crystal clear I wanted to open a business. And I was, on the couch, like writing down what I was going to do and how I was going to do it. And my husband's like, you have 5 years left, Misty. And, I'm like, I'm going to try and get early retirement and get, and they said no, but
Right.
I still tried. But the point being is I had 5 years to, like, I war gamed the ever loving business out of, like, how to get out, what I was going to do, who I needed to talk to, and all of those things. And so we make our service members feel really bad for saying, I'm kind of considering, especially when you're with people that are on the road to retirement.
Oh, yeah.
And so I really had to consider this. One time I had a sergeant that called me about a year ago, and she's like, ma'am, I don't know. I think I want to get out. But everybody I'm talking to is just saying re-enlist, and I'm like, well, do you want to get out? And she's like, yeah, I think so. I think I want to take this, but I don't know. And she's like, everybody I talk to says re-enlist or go be a GS somewhere, like just transition completely from the Pentagon to the job next door.
Yeah.
And I realized it wasn't that those people were wrong. It was that they just didn't have any perspective. Those
Right.
were people that only have been in DOD since they were 19 years old or 21. And that's all they knew. So they couldn't really give good advice on
Right.
other options or encourage her to take the leap and say, you absolutely will be fine. And so I think the problem is we don't talk about it soon enough,
Yeah.
which is then why you feel like you're almost in free fall, because it's too late and you haven't found a new, like, steady ground. So that's,
I agree. I absolutely agree. I think, the recommendation of going to transition assistance program course, 1 year out is too late. When you need to really start planning and looking at where you want to go. And I too agree with you on location because we decided to come here to Maryland, and from there, everything started to fall into place.
mhm.
We were like, okay, we know the area, we kind of have an idea. And then, and so far we've been here for 2 years and we're doing just fine, and it's definitely something that more people should really talk through. But you're right. You're talking about people making you feel guilty because you're supposed to have a loyalty, right? It's a
Right.
loyalty to the institution.
Yeah.
And they don't know. They don't know what that walk kind of looks like. So yeah, they're going to encourage you to stay in.
Yeah. Well, and there is a loyalty. So just think about how if 2 years or 3 years you could have said, "You know what? I have a professional, like I'm a protocol officer, right? So
Yeah.
what if I had joined the protocol officer networks that were civilian or in government, and I started going to these events regularly saying, I'm, like, leaving to go to this networking event, or
Yeah.
I started to meet civilian people that are at Department of State or all these other, and then whenever I started to retire, then I would be like, I'm actually retiring in 6 months. And they're like, Misty, oh my gosh, well, you should. I was already serving as a board member. Like, I would have never considered that because that would have taken
Right.
away from what I was currently doing, which then would have looked like, was I not committed? Or I mean, there's jobs that I didn't leave the Pentagon until I was 8 p.m. So there, but at least we would have been encouraged. And that's why I think, you don't know what you don't know until you're the one retiring. And I've had people say, oh my gosh, I had no idea. But you're trying to do it between. You don't talk about it. And the people that are around you have never experienced transition. So
Yeah.
there's really no guidance unless you go and seek it out. But you
Yeah.
don't have time to seek it out, or you don't know where to go. And so that's what you're all about, and me for sure, about finding our people and our tribe and bringing them close and saying, ask me a question, tell me what industry, and let me make connections for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we are definitely moving in that direction and working in concert, if you will, with one another to try to build our own communities. And I love the whole premise or the adage of communities connecting to other communities,
Mm.
you know, and how we as, you know, prior military, we get that. We get the camaraderie, we get the esprit, we get the team, we get that. And
Yeah.
so we know what that looks like. And so if each one of us was able to do that and then to connect with one another, how much of an impact will that be?
Yeah.
Right. And so that and that's kind of it's a visionary, but I believe in that concept.
Mhm.
And moving for sure in that.
Me too.
So your transition as you transition from the Pentagon, and then you said 5 years prior, you were
I was
scratching out
building.
little ideas on a piece of paper and looking at ways to develop your business. So, you know, tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah. You know, I didn't know what I didn't know, but I knew
Oh,
what
yeah.
I could do. I knew I loved and felt valued, just like I said before. Like as an adjutant, I knew I felt valued. And when I became a staff secretary and I'm sitting outside of a 3 stars office or the protocol, you know, of the commandant. And so I am like, they turn and say, whatever the question is, and I need an answer, right? And when we would go to all these events or we would show up to things, like I knew who was in the room, who's at the table, what are they, you know, what is everybody eating? What are you eating? You know, all the things. Where's the car, the uniform, the people, the discussion points, and what's the people want to talk about, right? And I knew all of that, and I recognized in this particular moment that I could like pinpoint on a map, that I sat there and realized I was talking to a retired general. And I said, "How is retirement going?" And he said, "You know, Misty, it's going okay, but I really wish." And he's like, "I pull out my phone and there's nothing on my calendar. There's all these people calling me. I don't know this, you know, like I need to get an LLC." And he starts to name all of these things. And I realized all the stuff that I do on a daily basis to make sure that these men and women know where they're going and who's in the room and what are they going to eat and what type's the car and what are they going to talk about, and give them the read ahead and the seating chart and the guest list. All of those things are still so important in retirement.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the growth part for me was I knew I could take all of the skills the Marine Corps taught me on taking care of those men and women, and it was going to be implicit because I'd sat there for so long. I could pretty much define what a look was, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question for me was when I started putting this plan together, was I identified something that I didn't initially know I was going to do, but it was almost like left of Bang. So Bang was all the services they were going to need as they became a consultant, a board member, and all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
But what I recognized was everybody was telling me it was taking them 8 to 12 months. I called about 30 generals and said, "Here's the questions I have." And I did market research on here's the target audience. What did you wish you knew? How long did it take you to start and feel confident in your business? What are the systems? Who are the people you needed? You know, and so I just wrote down all these answers and kind of put together research, and then decided what they really need is somebody to give them a roadmap of when they walk out the service and they want to do those things. People start calling them, but they don't have the foundational pieces like an LLC, like an invoicing capability, like a CRM, like a, you know, they don't have this stuff that makes them a business yet.
Yeah.
And when these corporations and companies start saying, "Hey, come over here and speak for free or do all these different things for me," they don't even have the resident knowledge to say, "Well, wait a minute, like how much am I worth? What is my value?" And, you know, pump the brakes a little bit where they're taking the upper hand because they're the unicorn. They're
Yeah.
who has all the knowledge, but
Yeah.
they also are in an environment that they're not familiar with. And
Yeah.
so that's where I was like, you know what? I didn't see that coming. I knew how to do all the other stuff because that's what I had done for so long. And so I had to put together a curriculum that would help you go from first note, last note to I have a business in 4 months, and let's like with a plan, you know, and give them the roadmap that they weren't figuring out, like Googling what is an LLC. So like I always tell people, they're like, what's a consultant? And I'm like, think of it as somebody that has already been there and done it,
Yeah.
giving you the straightest path to your goal, because you don't have to Google. You can ask questions. There can be some coaching and some curriculum. There's conversations, there's group think, there's introductions, because there's people that you're going to say you need to meet, and I'm going to know them already. And so they're just there to make your journey smooth. Or you can, and I tell people this almost weekly, you can do it yourself. Of course you can.
Of course.
It's just going to take you longer. And when you go in your head and decide how much is your time worth, and if you're willing to give up an extra 5-6 months of Googling how to write a LinkedIn profile, then keep Googling, you know, or
Or
you
you
can
call us.
somebody, and then they're going to get you to where you need to be in 3 or 4 months, and then you can actually start making money in your business instead of still sitting at the table. And you're also avoiding a lot of time, wasted time, which is all we know is the most priceless, and frustration, because you don't know. And so you're having to kind of put those pieces together on an environment that you're just not absolutely sure of yet. So there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with going and finding people to help you put it together.
Yeah. And, that is a unique way to fill a need. And, I love your innovation. I love the fact that it is a gap in the industry. You do have, a lot of us who have served for a long time, and we have a wealth of experience. And, for us to be able to just start working in that is that whole way of just knowing that that is, it gives me the inspiration. It's like, I know what I want to do. I just want to do it. I just want to do it. All this
Mhm.
other stuff back here in the background, I just don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And so that's where you step in and go, okay, like I have a team. I have folks that I help you out with this. So,
Mhm.
and I know from and I'm just, looking, I'm on the outsider looking in. I'm like, this is absolutely ingenuous. I just like, I love the idea and I love the direction that you're going into. And we do have a comment from Glenn Roy,
Okay.
who's on LinkedIn. And so he says, developing a professional network of veterans that are working outside the DoD is paramount. I always
Mhm.
tell others to develop a LinkedIn account and start fishing for jobs as soon as they know they want to leave service. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Thank you so much, Glenn Roy, for joining us and for commenting with us tonight. But he's absolutely right. So I got the whole when I started in my journey, like, what are you doing in LinkedIn?
Mhm.
And I'm like, why are you not there?
Yeah.
you know, it is a professional network of, individuals. And I find that it's not just business oriented. These are thought leaders. There are, you know, folks that are in the research who are pushing out articles and just sharing information. So it's not just for entrepreneurs and for business minded individuals. I got my bridge job. I have a part-time job from LinkedIn.
Mm.
So it's an opportunity to really put yourself out there and brand yourself. And so I'm on this whole branding, journey, and it is a part of my business because I believe that it opens up so many opportunities. Personal branding, knowing, like, when I see your business, Misty, I see luxury. Is that one of the, I guess, words that you would attach to your business?
Yeah, I think so. I think I am very careful. I agree with you. LinkedIn is it is a place to display. We don't have the luxury of a newspaper or a commercial or, an ad in the paper. Like LinkedIn is our megaphone for a business that doesn't have a marketing department like Best Buy or on the commercial in the football game, right? So we have to utilize that platform, and every single thing that you put out is what people's image is of you. And so I want people to, I am very careful. You will never find me like in a airport lounge or in a gym or, like it's not like that for me. Like I am very, I'm not going to talk to you in my car on LinkedIn. There's certain ways that I want to present my company and I present myself, right? And so even when you're getting on Zoom, I, come dressed, and there's just something about the professionalism and the men and women that I am supporting. They live in that space. It's a professional environment, and I'm going to present myself that way. And so LinkedIn is that's my homepage for who I am and what my business stands for and what you're going to get, so you're not going to get that other thing, whatever that is. Whatever other that, which, one would argue it's kind of like I teach dining etiquette, and there's a time and a place. So if that is your brand and your brand is casual, then you're doing it right. So I'm not saying that it's just for me, and the time and the place that it is, I'm very, I just actually posted on someone's comments today about, spending money where it matters. And when you are talking about your brand, I spend money on a photographer, and I bring photographers to events, and I bring photographers to my clients' events. And I'm not gonna wait for a like a conference and use their photographer, because odds are you're gonna get maybe one picture, and your mouth's gonna be open, and you're not gonna be able to use it anyways. So, or you could spend the $200, and there's ways to get a reasonably priced, photographer. And you can tap into the veteran network that are, and you don't need a professional. If they take you 500 photos and you get 50 good ones from a really good camera, and you didn't have to tell them, to take a selfie, then you got 50 great photos, and you can use it for content. So I'm very cautious of, I'm going to spend money where it's going to make me money. And so that's definitely one of those places.
Yeah. And I appreciate that you sharing that with our audience and with us here on the platform, because we are representing our businesses, and it is an image thing. And it really depends on the audience. Who are you servicing? Because if you know your people, and you know what they do, and you know how they behave, then they will see that, oh, wow, okay, this is who she is. And I like that. And not everybody's business is for everybody.
That's right.
So I when you're going through the entrepreneurship, you'll see people, at different stages of entrepreneurship, and you'll see them doing different things. And it's really truly on what is it that you want for your business.
Yeah.
I
mean, I think you're spot on. And it really is an equivalency of like, I'll eat, my biscuit and gravy at Bob Evans in a certain way that I wouldn't eat biscuits and gravy at the Four Seasons, right? You got to know your audience.
Oh, yeah.
And the same goes for like, if I was helping somebody start a lawn care business, there are certain things that we would do. You wouldn't have to do some of the things because the audience is going straight to the point. You want to mow my grass, you need to talk to, there's other ways to approach it. So I definitely, I'm just very cautious of it, but I mean, I also get, the other side of it, that they think it's not important, or in kind of a tech world or a younger generation, that's really, it's fine to show up, not like that. It's not my thing. So yeah, I appreciate that you appreciate it.
Yeah.
And it is a very thoughtful and exhausting because I don't have somebody doing my social media. So it is me, and it does take a lot of time to do it right. And sometimes it's like, there's that whole Is it done? Is it not done? You don't get it done, or do you just get it done and send it out? So it is a struggle every week to make sure it's right.
Yeah. Well, I see it as also controlling the narrative. All right. And so that's, I feel, is one of the other things that are important for an entrepreneur is you're telling the story, and so how you tell your story is so important for you to be okay with how you tell the story.
True.
All right. So, and in this entrepreneurship or this journey that we're on, kind of tell us a little bit about, some of the lessons learned that you've had.
Yeah. Let me think. So I think one of them would probably be being really focused on, I talk to people about your pillars. That's what I use in my coaching program. But it's like, what are the things that you're focused on and who are you helping? It's usually like a fill in the blank, kind of like, I am Misty Cook and I help these people do this thing, solving what problem to make what impact. And so when you're asking yourself that, staying within those pillars when you are building your business. And I think that can be a little bit, there's a lot of shiny objects, and there's people that will kind of keep, like, you're like, oh, maybe I'll do that this week. And you're like, no, that is not aligned with what I'm doing. Or maybe it's just not aligned with the goals for this quarter, or,
Right.
because you can get really, especially when you're small, and I'm of 2, as of July. So for the first 24 months, I was by myself. And I was like farming out virtual assistants to help me do things or organize things or file emails. But I think that can be really distracting. You've got to stay focused and know that, like, for me, it's, veteran transition space. And then your time, you only have a certain amount of time. And so like we talked about, it's like a little bit of your time is in marketing and like telling the world who you are and what you do. Because if you don't, then nobody knows. And sometimes I'll sit down, and mostly with retired generals, and they're like, well, I don't want to talk about myself. Like, it's about me and my team. It's always been about the team. And I'm like, well, then consulting is really not for you.
Right.
Because you have to be about yourself. If you aren't, then nobody knows what you do, and nobody's going to go out for you and share the word about how amazing you are, And so you just have to be confident enough. So I think getting distracted on people's ideas of what you should be doing and not staying true to, like, okay, here's my goal for the quarter, and I'm going to do everything I can to get there. If that's like getting 2 new clients, and then like making milestones for how do you get 2 new clients? Well, you show up to networking events, or you talk to 5 new people a week, and there's different milestones that all you're doing is attacking this one problem, is get 2 new clients, right? And so you got to come up with ways to do that. Instead of like, oh, maybe I'll do a group class, or maybe I'll go and write a book, or maybe I'll do the podcast. And maybe, you're like, there's so many competing interests with your time. So I think, staying true to your pillars is really, a lesson learned. And I think, also is working really hard until you literally have no hours left before you hire. I talk to a lot of people that will hire, they think, and talked to one recently that's like, oh, I started my business and had 2 people. And you're like, you haven't even had a client. So they were like working on a shoestring budget. But I think my husband had started a business 2 years before I was able to start mine. So we did a lot of lessons learned there, and I'm grateful. And so I worked for probably it was 18 to 24 months by myself. And those last 6 months, I was working, on average, like 15 to 18-hour days. And I knew I was at a point where I'm like, I can't take on one more person. If somebody called today, then I would have to say no, which is truly the worst place that you can be as like a startup. You're like, can't say no. You have to figure out how to scale. And so I knew it was finally time. Where before I kept saying, I can take one more. I can do it by myself. I can do it. And I had literally ran out of hours in the day. And so the one next client would have meant I just didn't sleep or something, like that
Yeah.
was what I was giving up. And so I think, working really hard until you can't, because it is so stressful, I think, to take on somebody else, and you're responsible for that person and their mortgage and their things, like their livelihood depends on you. And
Yeah.
so it's just something I didn't take, lightly. And I'm glad that I waited as long as I did, and I waited as long as I could. And so I've seen that become, really bad too soon, because then you let them go. And I mean, that would be heartbreaking for them as well, and you. So I think not growing too fast. And then I think the other thing is doing things that you can repeat. And so
Mm.
I have this kind of like, if I can do this for somebody else the same way, then I'll do it. So it's got to be something, I can't make exceptions, I guess is the way I'm trying to say. Like, one person can't get this and the other person can, because I think about, to scale, what happens when there's 50? I won't be able to keep up with like the little things that make each person a little bit unique.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, to scale, like, can I do this for 50 people this way? And when the answer is no, I'm like, I can't do it like that. Then I have to do it this way. And this is the process. And my last point would probably is like SOPs and processes,
Yeah.
bringing on the person. You're like, in your head, you're like, it's all been in my head, and I've been running myself ragged for all this time. And now I have this new person that actually does not really get you any extra hours this first couple months, because now you have to get it out of your head and onto a piece of paper. So the sooner you can do that, or you just write it in a voice memo or whatever you do, the better. It doesn't have to be perfect, but at least everything that's in your head. Whenever Chris joined my team, she's like, oh, I've done it like this. And I'm like, okay. Cause she's been an executive assistant, but I'm like, okay, this is going to be like Starbucks. When you go to Starbucks, you order a macchiato, and you know that a macchiato is the same at this Target Starbucks as it is at the Starbucks in Los Angeles. It's like, you can do it your way, but this is Starbucks. So we're going to do it the same way for every person. And I had taken care of these, generals for 15 years of my career, and I know how it should be done. And so I'm not going to have individuals doing it their own way.
Yeah.
And so I have to get what's in my brain on a piece of paper to say, this is how we do these things. This is how we do a read ahead. This is how we follow up for a dinner event. This is how we do these things, and not like let somebody wing it. Because I won't be able to maintain a brand if everybody's winging it.
Yeah.
So that was those are some lessons learned, I think.
Oh yeah. That is like gold. That is awesome, because I talk about SOPs and processes too.
Mm-hmm.
And I know my good friend here, Leslie, who's on there, and she's all about systems, having systems. Yes, yes, yes. And she loves that you have to be the loudest person about your business, because you can't be the best kept secret. And so you do have to be able to share what you do on your platforms. And she said those were great lessons.
Awesome. Thank you, Leslie.
So yeah, I absolutely agree. And you've even kind of helped me to not get so distracted by all the things. And you really do have to be laser focused on what it is that you want, the goals that you're trying to achieve for that month. What is the revenue? What's the cash flow? I mean, there are a lot of these details of entrepreneurship that we may not even know. And when you say you don't know what you don't know, and you don't, until you get in it, and it's like, oh my goodness, I should have had that. I wasn't even thinking about it. Right.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, that goes to, making connections like you and I, because you go out and you make connections and you support one another. And when you are even in a collaborative environment, like our lives kind of overlap, but we're doing some of the similar things with different audiences, but we very conceivably I could still help women and you could help general officers, right? Like, it's not too far off.
right.
And I think sometimes people are hesitant to almost be in a collaborative field in the industry and not look at it like, you know what, us having a cup of coffee and kind of like, sharing some challenges is going to help us both grow. If
Yeah.
you're not looking like you're competing, you're helping each other to go back to where we're at and keep growing.
Yeah.
And
And
so,
I love that whole thing about, competing, because you can tell there are certain groups of individuals that I've came across since I retired who are more in the competitive mode, and they don't necessarily want to, share,
yeah,
and they feel like you're going to go up, then you're going to, do all these things in the background, and it's kind of crazy, right?
it really is
Um,
crazy. Yeah. When you find your people that appreciate it, and they're like, oh, that's good. Or just today, we talked about this platform you use for podcasts. And so I think when you find other friends, it's not like I need a podcast, but one day when I do, it
yeah,
might be the first thing I think of. Right.
yeah,
And so I think sometimes, you're just filing it away, and kind of goes back to consulting and streamlining. People have already made those mistakes. So if you put people in your orbit that are maybe ahead of you or behind you, they're going to know something that you don't know. So
absolutely.
then when you're making use of your time and you're networking, you're having a cup of coffee and you're like, tell me your favorite 3 technology platforms that you're using right now. And like, I have a top 3, and if you asked me 3 months ago, I don't think they're the same.
Right,
Because you're always learning and you're like, oh my gosh, I couldn't live without this, but
right.
you don't even know. So yeah, you got to have good people in your corner.
Yeah, you do. And speaking of which, we do have a few more minutes until we, end our conversation. But you recently created the women's group, where we kind of come together.
Yeah.
And and I've also created a little small community here in my local community. And so when you started to do that, what was it that you were looking to do? What is the future of that group?
Yeah. I felt like after now I'm about February, it will be 3 years that I retired. And so, I'm looking back at all these events and I just felt like it wasn't as some of them were just checks in the box. I felt like I just would show up, we would mingle, but there wasn't a goal at the end, or even people don't know. Like I always go to a networking event with like, okay, I'm going to meet 3 new people. 2 of them are going to be outside of my industry. I need to follow up. Like I knew, like I have homework. So I'm not spending my time, 2, 3 days a week out doing something without it. Like it's going to make me money on the other end. And so I was going to these events and I just felt like, you know what, there are so many powerful women that we do have something inside of us that's nurturing, that wants to help others. And I was like, I want it to be more intentional, where we're showing up to find out who is Rochelle, who is her audience, and who does she help, and how can I make a connection. So if I'm out hustling and meeting all these people, she needs to be top of mind on how I can make an introduction that would either in turn give her business or collaborative, or just kind of be a supportive colleague, whatever it is. But I just wanted it to be a more intentional effort. And so I thought, you know what? I love champagne, like pink for you. Champagne is my brand. And so I was like, you know what? I will just offer champagne and I'm going to bring these girls over to the office and tell them the story and say, today, like we are here, that every time that you have opportunities, these are the girls that you lift up, and kind of create some sort of incentive program to make this more fun. I think it's like Girl Scouts for big girls,
It
like
is.
the badges. It's like Girl Scouts, yeah. And so that's what we do. And so now we have our glasses and we earn charms, wine charms, and we are intentionally looking for ways. And so, bringing in people, but lifting each other up and learning about specifically, spending 15 minutes to walk around the room and say, who's your audience? Who are you? And find these new people. We make the new people, use plastic glasses so we can find them easily. Because as we grow, you want to target these people that are brand new and say, I don't know you, but I need to know who your audience is. And be very intentional about that question. Because I think we go to events and it's like, oh, how are you? What do you do? But like, if you ask me what keeps me up at night, or, what are you struggling with this week? Well, who can I introduce you to? Those are some really intentional questions. And I want it to be, you step on the, cheers grounds, and your mind is thinking, and you're practicing, right? Like practicing what real networking and support looks like, instead of just like eating sausage and drinking champagne. Like I just don't want it to be a check in the box. So we're
Yeah.
going to make some waves. Yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I have been to many networking events since I've been here, and it is just that, and so I do share like networking tips because, you know, again, we're not trying to waste our time out here, all right,
Mhm.
and drive to somewhere and don't really get anything out of it. And networking is not like it was when we were in the military, where we just pull up a chair
Yeah,
and we sit there and chit chat. Networking is
exactly.
truly,
And I think it takes practice,
it
so
does. It's a
some of it.
skill.
Yeah, and I wrote down a couple of things earlier about, thinking about talking to people when you're transitioning and having coffees. Like networking events and having coffees is practice, because, don't look at it like, "Oh, I'm just gonna get some like insights real quick at this coffee." It's like, no, practice saying, "I am this person and I solve," or "I'm still trying to figure out what I solve," or "How do I say this?" Like be really, specific, because the other person can say, "Okay, well, let's break this down." Like that's what I would do if I was with somebody, like helping you with your pitch, like for someone on the other side that's had to go to all these networking events, and it's like, "Well, tell me about yourself." When you're on the spot and it's in a very, non threatening place,
Right.
then that other person can help you kind of tighten that up, and then you can practice when you go to these events, and not like pretend that you're not there yet, but you're going to use it later, like that's the time to use it.
Yeah. And I think that leads us into the confidence, and having the confidence and trusting yourself,
Mm.
believing that what you do is actually a thing, you know? I think that sometimes people I'm serious.
I know what you're talking about. Mhm.
Sometimes people will hesitate because they don't truly believe in it.
Mhm.
And I always ask questions like, well, why are you having a hard time sharing that? Is it because you want someone else to believe in what you're doing before you do?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the fear of us, not sharing really hinders and hold us back from achieving the success that we desire.
Mhm. I agree. Confidence is, is the most important thing. I think you walk out of the service, and unfortunately, a lot of people's purpose and self-worth is tied to ribbons and stars and stripes, and then they put on regular clothes. And I tell clients, like, when you sit down and think about, maybe it's not as easy to say, like, what are you really great at? What are you an expert in? Like, sometimes that's hard for them. And so I turn it around on them and say, what did people seek you out for? What were people calling you when they call and say, "Can I have a little time with you? Like, can I get your insights, or what is your thoughts on this thing?" And you're like, "Well, why are they calling me?"
Hmm.
Like, "Oh, because they think I am an expert in this, or I am well versed in this topic." Whatever it is that they're calling you for, or they've sought you out for, that is your pillars. Those are your qualities that you have to now say, that is it. So I didn't have to say it. Somebody else said it for me. And then walk into the room with this confidence. And I think if I could give it like the magic blue pill or red pill to every transitioning veteran, it would be the insights that I have had working with Fortune 10, Fortune 100, 500 organizations, and the absolute kind of false narrative that is given to these billion-dollar companies, that they all have it all together, that it's just wound tight. They have the most effective smartest people working there, because it's just not true.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just regular people doing an okay job. But because, you know, they're worth billions of dollars, in your head, you're like, they must be amazing. And
Right.
so if I could give anybody, you know, these veterans, this idea that actually what they're missing is what you have. It's just that you don't have the confidence to say, or the understanding just yet. You're going to feel like you need to go get experience there, because you're like, well, I need to get experience. So I'll take a lesser role and get experience. And you're going to go crazy, because what you bring to the table is what they're lacking.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this drive, this understanding, this initiative, this leadership capability that they don't have. And so that's what I wish for all of them, is this confidence to absolutely believe what you have inside of you is their missing piece when you're talking to them.
Yeah. That's really good advice too. And that's, you know, and I think that a lot more of us, you know, we really truly know what we're supposed to be doing. We know what we have.
Mm-hmm.
We just need to take that step into it and just do it, you know, and what will happen,
Yeah.
right? The worst that could happen is it doesn't work, right? But if you never try, you know, I'm always living in the mindset with no regret, no regret, no regret. You know, living this life out to its fullest and reaching that highest level of the potential that we have inside of us, even in our next chapter. It is just all about leveraging our skills that we have and using them, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
really appreciate our conversation tonight, and sharing all your insights and your perspectives from when you went into the Marines and now as an entrepreneur, as the CEO of the COC, Concierge on Call. And, you know, I just look in here to see if there's any other comments here from our audience. So thank you so much, Misty, for
You're
being here tonight. Do you have any lasting comments before we jump off of the call today that you want to share?
I think we hit on most of them. Goals, milestones, delegate. Yeah. I think the only thing we didn't talk about was
just, you know, talking to people. I think making it a priority to talk to veterans, and then finding those 10 veterans a week that you're having virtual coffees with, and it can be 30 minutes, but having them help you articulate what you do. I think is really important, because that's the language barrier that industry doesn't have. And so they read it. And so if I told them I'm the commandant's protocol officer, I know what that means, but they're
Yeah.
like, we don't need one of those because we don't have that.
Right.
And in my head, I'm like, I can run circles around those two people that do what that is. It's just that we didn't make the language match. And you didn't take the time to understand, and I didn't take the time to go research how to articulate what were those things that I did in that job that would translate to the person that's at Google doing that for a CEO or at
Right.
Apple or whatever. So I think it's really important to find buddies that have, you know, your MOS or your expertise or your industry, if that's what you're going to go back to, and ask them how to put it into civilian language.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is really good advice. And Leslie here says, great insights. Thank you both for your service. You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Leslie.
And she talks about the transferable skills.
Yeah. Well, perfect. Well,
yes.
let me know whatever I can do for you. You know, I am at your whim. You just tell me when and where, I'll be there.
Awesome. And you know what? This was just so good for our audience just to hear of another veteran who is out here living and servicing others on their own terms and slaying it to make a positive impact in this world that we are living in right now. So everyone, thank you so much for being here tonight. As we all end this show, you know what the saying is, keep on slaying until you can't slay no more. And we will see you all next Sunday
Okay.
at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So see y'all. Have a good
Bye,
evening,
everybody.
everybody.